You're watching Leafs Morning Take with host Nick Alberga and former NHLer Jay Rosehill. The show starts now.
I can't hear anything, boys.
Start to season 3. There we go. I think we're good here.
Wakey.
Morning Take season 3. I'm Zack Phillips filling in for Nick Alberga here alongside Jay Rosehill and the best producer in the game behind the scenes there helping me out right away, producer Vic, to make sure that all mics and all systems go to get things going. But Rosie, year 3, season 3 of Leafs Morning Take. How you feeling ahead of today?
I know, 2 short years ago, I was starting this thing. Pretty green behind the ears, but it's flown by, and I enjoy doing it. Looking forward to season 3. I think this one's going to be a big one. The thing's growing, and people are watching, and there's exciting things happening in Leafs Nation. So I couldn't be more ready to go, buddy.
What a start to this morning, too. I mean, I get in here, mic's all good to go. I test the thing, I see it going. We go to start and gone. That's the way it should be. But all right, well, I mean, we taught you just mentioned it, big things coming up here. It's pretty exciting what happened this morning. We see the Leafs making a bunch of moves, maneuvering around the cap, having to send guys down, putting guys onto LTIR, opening up quite literally $1 of cap space. So we'll get into all of that. We're interested to hear what you guys have to think about what moves took place here this morning. We'll send those in the chat. We'll try to get to some of those questions and thoughts, comments, concerns throughout the course of the show here. Rosie, I do want to start with, though, just a quick recap here of what we just saw in the preseason. 6 games. After the first 2, we've got one of the craziest comments I've heard here in Toronto media in a long time, which is just a wild thing to say, considering all the things that we've heard here in Toronto over the last while. 0-2 after the first 2 games, and we're asking Craig Berube if it's time to panic in the preseason. 4-0 since that point. You've wrapped up the preseason 4-1-1. Special teams look pretty good, and whether it's the stats and the results that we saw that go up on the board, or if it's actually the way that they played, or if it's John Tavares coming out and talking about the fact that, you know, it feels like they're allowed to play creative and fluid and, you know, play the way that they want to play, not have to be forced into a box on the power plays and the special teams. What have you made so far of the preseason? Is there anything that you can kind of take away, or is it just business as usual? It doesn't really matter. Let's get to game 1.
Well, it's kind of funny. They're not, how many times have you heard the name Austin Matthews in the last handful of weeks? Like they're talking about, the lower levels and the different layers behind this team to try to shore it up. It's kind of interesting this morning, we kind of realize and see what that's going to look like. Some more cap creativity and some pretty neat, circumvention of the cap for certain amounts of time until it's time to get under it. They're under by $1. We'll get to that. It's very interesting. My hats are always off to the Leafs for being pretty unique in the way that they, look down the road and get things set up for themselves cap wise. But it's just been a tale of, the lower levels, the bottom 6, what's going to happen on this D end, and, who's going to make this team. And it hasn't really been about the big boys, which is nice for a change. The spotlight's always on them. We're always talking about them. They were just kind of chill as we figure out what happens to this roster. But it's again, to me, the biggest thing I'm sure for those guys in that room is getting used to Craig Berube, implementing the system that he wants to play. A lot of these guys have been playing for Sheldon Keefe for a long time, and that's a big change, to have a new head coach at the helm that wants to make the necessary changes to get this team to where it needs to go. So for me, it's just a lot of the boys getting ready for what Coach Berube is going to expect out of them. And then, I think they're probably pretty happy to get camp behind them, preseason behind them, and start playing for real in the regular season with their actual teammates who they're going to be battling with for months and months. And it's just an exciting time to have that thing actually shored up, look at who's there, who's with me, who made it. Congratulations. Let's go to war.
Well, we are kicking off season 3 here, so we'll start to get into some of the roster changes and things coming up. If you are watching right now on the Leafs Nation 401 on YouTube, make sure to find us on Leafs Morning Take wherever you find your podcast. Check out any of the articles and content being put up over at theleafsnation.com. Subscribe here to the channel, like the stream. We're going to have back Monday through Friday starting today, every single day, breaking down Leafs content, talking about what happened in the night before, games before, as well. The Leafs Nation After Dark, myself back for the first game of the regular season Wednesday night, alongside Rosie here, hopping in to help break that one down. October 9th, Wednesday night against Montreal Canadiens. But Rosie, let's get into some of those signings and roster moves and changes that we did see and took place here this morning, because it was one of those ones where, I kept talking about in the post game shows that I've done and with you, like, we're basically just kind of expecting at this point. The biggest stories are who's going to sign out of these PTOs and how are the other things going to shake up. So as we saw this morning, it breaks Max Pacioretty, Steven Lorentz sign out of their PTOs, 1-year deals each. Cade Weber, 2-year extension. And then it's how do the rest of the dominoes fall? Well, we see a couple of corresponding moves that take place within that. We see Calle Yarncroke put onto LTIR there, send down Cowan, send down Minton, Connor Dewar onto the IR, Hawk and Paw onto the LTIR, Mermis onto LTIR as well. So things start to move there. Were you anticipating both of these guys, Lorentz and Pacioretty, to sign out of camp? Let's start there.
Well, Pacioretty, I certainly did. I didn't know, where Lorentz was going to fall. It was pretty jumbled there in the bottom 6 on who's going to be making this. I mean, we're talking about Cowan, we were talking about Robertson and Holmberg, and then Lorentz is on this PTO, and it was kind of, it was up to the guys to kind of decide who was going to, rise to the top to take those jobs. And I do like that competition and opportunity throughout camp in the preseason, but it looks like, those guys are signed up. It was, like I said before, to get those guys signed and then to make the moves and then the long-term IR stuff and then the IR stuff. And there's even season opening IR stuff going on. So it's kind of, I don't think the average fan gets that deep into the weeds with all the logistics behind that kind of thing, but they've got it down to $1. They're cap compliant. They're 23-man roster and they're ready to rock. But I'm not surprised Pacioretty is there. He's looked good. I think he's been on the roster since basically that first exhibition game. He showed that he's probably going to be a guy they want to have on the roster. And Lorentz just played his way on. I think he's going to be 4th line left wing there, and we'll take it from here. There's options. There have been options for a while, and they've made their bed here, and it looks like they're going to move forward.
I really liked the Lorentz signing. I feel like the way he came into the camp, he came in with a positive attitude, just kind of this overall excitement and energy about him to be coming here to Toronto, to be giving this an opportunity, playing for his hometown childhood team, like all that kind of stuff. You could see it. It never really got too big for him. And he plays, or at least so far to me, he seems to play the way that you would expect Berube to want his teams to play. And I think that was kind of exemplified in that first goal that was scored by the 4th line in the Saturday night preseason game. Puck goes in deep by Lorentz, makes a check. It goes to the wall. I think it was Kampf, plays the puck down low. It's Ryan Reeves in on it right away, makes a hard hit, and it's Steven Lorentz following things up, going to the net, who gets the pass and is able to bury. It's like, it's a heavy game. It's hard down below the goal line, taking away time and space. You're not trying to do these fancy toe drags like Matthews in the slot on the John Tavares goal. That's not their game, and they're not trying to do anything outside of that. So he just kind of fit that mold. He seemed to be enjoying himself here. He seemed to be having a positive attitude. I like that. The one that's been a little bit more polarizing, though, of those two guys has been the Pacioretty signing and what they were going to do with him. At first, it became pitted head-to-head. Robertson, Pacioretty, you want to talk about stupid questions. People are asking Nick Robertson after the first game when Pacioretty scores 2. Oh, what do you think about Pacioretty? Like, well, first of all, who the fuck cares? Like, why are we asking this guy that? And second of all, I don't think that those two were ever actually going head to head. They play very different roles or fill very different roles here for this team. But there are people who, over the course of the preseason, started to kind of sour on him a little bit. He's old. He's been injury prone. He's a little bit slower. How is he going to impact things? Like, what kind of difference is he going to make? Is there concern for you throughout the course of an 82 game season that a guy like Max Pacioretty, given his age, his injury history, and kind of just the tad bit we did see him slow down throughout the preseason where he came out guns a-blazing, it wasn't really the same thing in game 6. Is there concern that this could just tail off and be a what the hell was that signing? Or is this more just a, hey, it's a cheap contract. He can add for that, and if it doesn't work, it doesn't work.
Yeah, I'm not concerned about it. I mean, especially with what he had with that Achilles, and may have came back a little early and redid it. It's something that's just going to be this huge gaping hole on your hockey DB where you just weren't playing, and that's what Achilles injuries are. All I can do is assume that it's healed 100% and he's moved on from that. And now, once that thing is healed, and I can't imagine he'll do it again, or there's just massive problems. Like his career is basically over if he has another Achilles injury. I would think that it was healed. He maybe came back too early, got some bad luck, whatever. I don't look at him as injury prone right now. I think he's ready to rock. He's 100%. And if you have those quips about it, then who do you want to replace him with? Like, who do you want to replace him with? He's cheap. He has experience out the ass. He's got leadership, and he's like a premier playmaking, goal scoring. Like his upside is massive, and he doesn't cost anything. So who are you replacing him with? Like, just give me a bet. People can point fingers and say, "Oh, he's old." Well, okay, then what would you do? What would you do? Like, there's no better option. It's a good move. It makes sense. The sky's the limit for potential. So if there's naysayers about Pacioretty, like who do you have that's so much better suited for that position than Max Pacioretty? I don't have anyone that's got hit that's worthy of taking him off of there and saying no thanks to him. So it's a smart signing. It's a good signing. Like I said, the upside is huge and it doesn't cost you anything. And like you say, if it doesn't work, well, what are they out? Like, not much. So it makes sense to me. And going back to Lorentz, like, I like what he said. He's a guy that understands the assignment. He's not a guy that's like, fourth line, like, I'm more of like a third line guy and my minutes need to be this for me to be, I got to play with this guy and that guy. He's not that. He's saying, I've thought for a while that if you put me in a Maple Leafs uniform, they can use me in the bottom 6. And I know the style they need to play. I know what holes need to be filled. And I can bring that presence and have the awareness to say, I know what you need and I'm here willing to give it to you. And the added bonus of, it's his hometown team. He's got the passion and it's a lifetime, thing for him that he'll have forever and tell his grandkids about. And that's all a bonus for him personally, but it's a guy that understands what they need. He's got the experience behind him. He's played enough games. He's won a Stanley Cup. He's been part of a team that rolls like the Florida Panthers. I mean, checks a lot of boxes. And the best thing is his attitude is like, put me in that role. I want it because I'm going to give you what you need. That's huge in that line.
Yeah, I love the guy kind of coming in and embracing that position, right? Like,
Exactly.
it's just, this is who I am. This is the game I play, and here's how I'm going to help you. Perfect. Thank you. That's it. That's all we're asking for. We want that guy to come in here and know who he is, what he does, and how he's effective and helpful to the team. At some point, that kind of has to be what some guys realize that they are when it comes to being a professional hockey player or being in the NHL. And how are you going to make a difference? How are you going to help the team win? He's kind of come to that realization, which is nice. Rosie, I don't know if you're seeing here in the chat, our friend Donnie Does Dishes. He's saying about Pacioretty, he's old and slow. Rosie, you all said the same thing about Joe Thornton. Correct me if I'm wrong, but this feels like a very, very different situation than what Joe Thornton and Patrick Marleau were when they came here. Like, there was this idea amongst Leafs fans, it felt like at the time, or an optimism of like, hey, these like veteran guys seeking a Stanley Cup, they're going to come here and they're going to inject some life and help these young guys, push them over the top and be guys to play alongside Matthews and Marner and fit into those roles. Like, that's not what Pacioretty's here to do. He's not here to be a guy who's going to be your scoring first line left winger, second line left winger. I mean, we looked at the daily face-off lineups that were projected ahead of this morning, and Pacioretty's there on the third line. He's going to play in some more limited spots, some more limited roles. You're going to want Nyes ahead of him, Domi ahead of him. Guess who else is probably going to be ahead of him? Obviously listed on opposite sides of the lineup right now, one on left wing, one on right. But Nick Robertson's going to get some taps at left wing ahead of him if push comes to shove. He's not a guy that you're leaning on saying, help us, like, help us get through this, help us figure this out. He's there more a guy who's there to just kind of add when needed and be support. I view the two very differently. I don't know if I'm way off base here.
Yeah, and it's different scenarios, different points of the team's growth, and like you said, they brought those guys in probably to help out the young stars that were up and coming. The team was in a totally different position, but I mean, Donnie, okay, it's a $800,000 third liner. Like, who do you want there? Like, tell them to answer. Who do you want there? It happens to be Max Pacioretty, who's pretty high stock, pretty good experience level. Been the captain of this and that. Montreal Canadiens, understands what it's like to play under the hot lights of a market like this. He's his upside of playmaking, scoring ability is huge. Yeah, there's a reason he's not making $3-4 million. It's because he is a little bit older and a little bit slower, but he's an $800,000 third liner. Like, no one said we're giving the guy $4 million and playing him with Matthews. Like, that's not what anyone's saying. Like, who do you want there instead? Like, give me names. Who's better suited to play in that spot for that money than Max Pacioretty? I think there's a reason he's there, because it's smart and there's a ton of upside.
I want to know how much you're kind of noticing already at this point the impact Craig Berube and his staff are having on this lineup. Like, I wrote an article for the LeafsNation.com, should probably be coming out at some point here in the next couple of days. First article, I don't know, it might be absolute dog shit. We'll find out when people read it. But talking about just the special teams, some of the differences that we're seeing. You can look at the 6-game sample size. It's very small relative to, an 82-game schedule of last year. But how often do we come on into the post-game shows, and you and Nick talk about it in the morning show here, and be like, power play stunk last night, stale, predictable, guys aren't moving their feet, and then they go through these massive slumps, and then they go through massive highs. And yeah, like, some of that stuff is great because you expect during the course of an 82-game season, there's going to be ups and downs. But then every single year, playoff time, Rosie, like, you and I are on there talking about in the post game, like, what the hell is wrong with this? Last place power play in the entire playoffs. It's not just a 1-year thing. This has happened the last couple of years. Now, all of a sudden, I'm watching these guys out there. It feels more fluid. It feels more creative, a little bit faster, a little bit more purpose to their game. I just feel like if this continues throughout the course of the season, we could see a drastic overhaul of these special teams that could actually lead to a major, major improvement in an area that's been lacking in the playoffs. And I'm wondering how much of this is the players saying, you know what, screw it, we have to play this way. How much of it is Craig Berube and his staff? And am I looking too much into this?
It's tough, man. Like, again, I still don't have an answer for why it was so bad in the playoffs, specifically last year. I'm not a power play specialist, but I'm also not in the room. I'm not, there for the meetings and for the before practice, before pregame skate, pass around on the first unit, goes and rips it around and is getting, gets together and huddles and talks about this might be open, that might, where are you going to be if this happens? And those little, behind the scenes conversations, meetings, video sessions, strategy planning, like, what is their MO? I don't know what the specifics are in that. Nobody does but them. But for whatever reason, and I still don't know, like, just pure talent wise, they should have done exponentially better than they were doing in the playoffs last year. It's kind of unheard of. It's inexplicable. I don't understand it. I don't have a reason for it, but I wouldn't expect it to continue too much longer. I mean, that's just an anomaly. But yeah, when you get some new blood in behind the bench and it's a different outlook, and you can kind of shed the trappings of last year and some of the icky feelings and traps that you've had, and now it's a clean slate. I mean, with that amount of talent and the options that they have to put on that power play, you just have to think something's got to give. And I would not be surprised if they have success on the power play and on the PK with special teams. And I expect the bodies that are on that sheet of paper there to do good things with that. Again, it's just, is that mental block going to be there in the playoffs where things go, oh boy, now it really matters. Now people are really paying attention. Are you going to grip your stick a little bit tight? Like, I can't think of anything else other than, overthinking it and having a mental block to come up as short as they do in the playoffs with the guys that they have. It's inexplicable, but all you can do is figure that can't continue to happen. It seems like an anomaly, but again, we'll see. We can't predict what happens in the playoffs, but so far it does look like there's a shot of new life in that room with their power play and all their special teams. It just looks like it's kind of a little reset button has been hit.
Yeah, it's nice. Sometimes I guess you just need that refresh, a new set of eyes. It's like the thing we just keep going back to it, but it's like